Friends, please be seated. Well, it is good to be back with you this Sunday. Pastor Laura will be with you next Sunday, and then I will return full-time again on the 16th. So it is good to see you. I've been away on my summer break for the last several weeks, as you know, and whenever I am away, I notice something curious when I return. The world has not changed very much. The headlines are still the same. The conversations are still the same. The same responsibilities wait for me on my desk. The same familiar faces gathered here on Sunday morning. And yet, returning from being away, I find that I see things differently. I notice things I had stopped noticing before. I hear things differently. Different, better questions arise. Perhaps you've had the similar experience. You step away from the daily grind, a vacation maybe, a retreat, or even after recovering from an illness. And when you return, nothing is really different except somehow you are. Sometimes the greatest change isn't that the world becomes different, it's that we begin to see it differently. Our gospel this morning begins with the feeding of the 5,000, and I'm going to ask that we open our hearts and minds to hearing and seeing it differently. We know the story well, so it won't be easy. 5 loaves, 2 fish, 12 baskets. But the thing is, Matthew didn't write this story as a standalone story. Just before today's gospel, in the narrative, Matthew gives us another kind of meal. A birthday banquet in Herod's palace. Matthew places these 2 stories right next to one another, almost as though he wants us to move directly from one table to the next without even being able to catch our breath. One banquet ends with John the Baptist's head carried into the dining room on a silver platter. The other ends with everyone fed and plenty left over. Matthew doesn't explain the connection. He simply invites us to pay attention, to notice. Herod's banquet isn't really about food. It's about fear. It's about losing face. The fear of appearing weak. The fear of disappointing the crowd assembled. Everything at this table revolves around protecting power, preserving appearances, and holding on to what might just be lost. And maybe that's why it feels so familiar when we read it or when we hear it. Because one of the deepest hungers of our own time isn't for bread at all. It's the feeling that we can never catch up. There is always one more email to send, one more text, one more deadline to meet, one more obligation to fulfill, one more bill to pay, one more disappointment to endure, one more person, place, or thing demanding our attention. We tell ourselves that if I can just get through this week, if I can just get through to my summer break, this project, this season of life, then we will somehow we'll catch up. We can take a breath. We can slow down. And then we will find our moment of peace. But somehow, some way, in this ever-accelerating world, that which we seek remains elusive, just beyond our grasp. Life begins to feel as if it's an endless race to keep up and to keep on keeping on. And without even realizing it, slowly, over time, we begin to believe that there will never be an end. And there will never be enough. Never enough time, never enough energy, never enough positive attitude, never enough security, never enough certainty, resources, never enough us. Fear teaches us to see scarcity everywhere. Have you experienced that? I know you have. Have you experienced it lately? I'm sure you have, as I have. But then Matthew takes us right out of the palace and out into the wilderness. The crowds have followed Jesus on foot. They are tired. They are hungry. They're carrying illnesses, grief, disappointments, and hopes that we can scarcely imagine in our lives here in the Conejo Valley. The disciples, they are also tired. They are also hungry. They are also probably on their last good nerves. And they look at this crowd and they do what most of us would do in their situation. They start doing the math. 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5,000 people. It isn't enough. And they're right. It isn't enough if arithmetic is the thing that is shaping your reality. Before Jesus says anything about bread or about feeding or any of that, Matthew tells us something else here. And this is important. He has compassion for them. He has compassion for them. Jesus' first response is not strategy. It's not to go to committee. It's not about efficiency or anxiety. It is compassion. Because compassion starts with paying attention. Attention to what is right in front of him. Where fear sees problems to solve, compassion sees people to help and love. Where fear is preoccupied with protecting itself, compassion is free enough to notice the suffering of the human beings around us. And so my contention is that's the first miracle in this miracle story. In a world that is constantly urging us to hurry, worry, compete, and keep up, Jesus refuses to let urgency become his master. He actually sees the people standing before him. And then he does what Jesus teaches us to do. He takes what little they have, and he blesses it, And he breaks it, and he gives it. And somehow there is enough. Matthew doesn't ever explain how. He simply tells us what actually happened. Maybe the deeper miracle here isn't only that bread is multiplied, but it is that Jesus is revealing a completely different way of inhabiting the world as it is. How many of us find ourselves reading the paper, encountering someone on the street, driving on the freeway, and we can't think of anything except, why can't the world be other than it is? But Jesus shows us a different way. A world where compassion is more fundamental than fear. A world where generosity is stronger than scarcity. A world where people are never reduced to problems to be managed or obstacles to overcome. In this beautifully elegant sandwich of these two table stories, Matthew presents two realities, two tables. Which table is teaching you how to see your neighbor? Which table is teaching you how to see your family, your work, your future? Which table is teaching you to see yourself? Because one table will teach us that there is never enough, you better go on the offense, and that fear must always have the last word. The other begins with compassion. And somehow, in the hands of Christ, who invites us to be his hands, compassion becomes enough. Enough to feed a multitude, enough to reshape a community, enough to teach us little by little that the world is more grace-filled than fearful, that the world is more abundant than scarce, that the world is more deeply held in the love of God than we often even dare to believe. Every one of us keeps returning to tables that shape us. Not just dining tables, but conference tables, kitchen tables, television, the phone in our hand or the phone on our wrist, the endless news cycles, the stories we tell ourselves about failure and success, the quiet voices that whisper, we are behind, that we haven't done enough, that all we need to do is do more, that we aren't enough. The similar thing about each table is that they feed a hunger. Every table teaches us something about what the world is like. And when we return there often enough, those tables at which we eat begin shaping not only what we believe or how we act, they shape who we become. The bread of abundance and love. Are you eating the bread of anxiety? What table have you been returning to? What story has been feeding your imagination? The story that says life is a competition and there won't ever be enough. Or the story that begins with compassion and discovers that somehow in the hands of God, there is always enough. Each of us will return to our lives on Monday morning. And Monday morning will reveal which table is shaping us. Because tomorrow the headlines are going to be exactly the same. Tomorrow, the demands on your time, they're not going to change. Tomorrow, that difficult conversation you've been meaning and not meaning to have, it will still be waiting for you. Nothing out there is going to be different. The miracle is perhaps we will be different. And perhaps that's the greatest miracle of all of the miracles in this story. Not simply that the bread is multiplied, but that week after week, Jesus continues to gather ordinary, hungry people like us around this table until we begin to see that world in a new way, until we begin to see it the way he does.